Okay, taking a look at some training montage footage from Dorian Yates' Blood and Guts training videos.
I hope you're ready, because it's going to be rough. Like I said, it's blood and guts.
When I first started in the gym, one of my friends at the time that had a little more experience than me, he actually lent me this DVD. He was like, you have to just go watch this. I had no interest in bodybuilding. I was trying to get in the gym. I was trying to get jacked. And I think him lending me this DVD was more about like understanding the level of intensity in a training session and just like getting jacked up to train. And this, if you need that motivation, Blood and Guts is definitely it. And yeah, it's cool looking at some of these exercises. So Dorian Yates, he was known in the 90s for like bringing back HIIT training, high intensity training. Mike Mentzer had done that in the 70s. Arthur Jones popularized it through machine training, Nautilus machine work, which is a cool concept. So you can see Dorian doing some of this stuff here, like this pullover. And what you see in the pullover portion is he's getting a lot of forced reps in here from his training partner. And the whole concept around HIIT training is that one big set to like absolute failure and intensity. And what is cool about the Blood and Guts training series and video is that it really showcases that, like that really intense set, what that should look like, how hard that should be. So it's cool. Like he brought that training concept back. I experimented a little bit with it when I was younger, and it phases out pretty quick. I'm being honest with you. Like if you're not sauced to the gills, HIIT training it's pretty useless. Like if you want to get stronger, like you got to understand too. With like Dorian Yates, he could just do a couple warm-up sets and be like 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plates, and like 4 plates, like 400 pounds on a bench press and like max out, right? Because he's, that enhanced that he can do that. Like your average gym goer, average person will most likely never get to that kind of intensity without a lot of preparation. And your strength and everything will decline pretty quickly. But the intensity brought in your training sets, in your accessory work even, like a lot of people really dog it on their accessory work, and this showcases where that intensity needs to be across the board on a training day. So it offers so much, and to me, like the HIIT training approach, it still is something that offers some insight into a different model of performance. And the big one that Dorian also praised, same as Mike Mentzer, is like the recovery, right? You only need to hit the muscle groups once a week really hard. If you're hitting them enough, that's fine. Muscle growth, for sure, that could be the case, right? Like you could probably get away with doing that and be fine. If we're talking about strength in general, just as like a hobbyist or just a general person trying to get strong, that's just not going to work. And you're going to need to put some time in on straight sets and some periodization, some pyramid work, percentage-based training. It's not really going to come that easily. But I think a newbie in the gym can really benefit from getting started with this type of approach. Just hitting the muscle groups once a week, just a few sets, learning to understand what muscle failure feels like. But yeah, let's look at some of the other movements he's doing here. Like this one here, it's good. He's doing the back extensions. And you can even see here on the back extensions, he says it's time for Christmas or something like that. And he's, talking about the development of the lower back musculature and how when it gets developed like that, you get that Christmas tree kind of shape, which you don't see many people and even bodybuilders really training their lower back to that extent these days. And Dorian was really big on that, like going hard and heavy on those smaller, finer muscles as well. Yeah. Dumbbell inclines, he's doing 2 arms, and then he just like, you can see here he just goes to 1. Like you go from double arm curls, and like this is really the true expression of failure, is like, what more can you do? So he's doing double arm curls, and then he's like, well, I can still keep going, alternating, and his training partner's pushing that up. Like this is a whole new level of intensity. If you haven't experienced that kind of muscular failure or approach in training, I think it's definitely something to experiment with. And if I was to do this and how I have done it, like moving forward, like I do it more in my accessory work, and like my heavier lifts, movements that I'm trying to get strong in, I'll tend to focus a little bit more on the practicing of the skill, hitting certain numbers, and then, pushing myself on some of those accessory pieces and isolating certain areas of the body and moving to that approach. As you're moving into, I find as I'm like moving into my 40s as well too, I respond really well to having things a little bit more spread out in recovery wise. Like Dorian was on a 4-day split, and within that, his first day of the week is like shoulders and arms, because that's what he's trying to bring up in his body. 4-day split for someone starting out in the gym probably doesn't have to be what areas of the body you want to bring up if you have no experience. But a half body 4-day split would be very accessible and easy to get started. So you got your lower body day, got your upper body day, and then you repeat that with some different movements or the same movements. So you don't need a lot of variety to make a lot of progress. And I think that's one of the things that also is highlighted with this HIT approach to training, is like hitting, picking one main exercise and a couple accessories to it, and hitting absolute intensity within like 4 sets. And then as you're going on like 1 set, it really shows that you can get the job done with just a couple things. And this is what I run into all the time with people, is like they're just doing so much stuff. And if we're talking about a hard gainer in the gym, someone that can't get strong or can't put on some size, that's the very first question to ask, is like, how many exercises are you doing? How hard are you going in those exercises? And most of the time it comes down to like cutting that in half. You only need to do these 3 or 4 things, and you have to do them really well and at a high intensity. Like this hack machine. So he's doing hack squats here, narrow stance hack squat. So he's really smashing the quads, and look at that depth. And he must be like 300 pounds in this video, 250. And he's just fucking ass to grass. He's going all the way down. But you can see here, right? Like he's working to failure to that one top set, and those extra reps are being forced. And there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to get more out of this set, right? So forced reps are one way. Cluster sets are another way. Myo reps. So these are strategies where you do as many reps as you can, or you work to that peak point of the set, and then you rest for a very short duration, and you do more, right? So if it was 8 reps, we rest 15 seconds, you do 3 more. You rest 15 seconds, you do 4 more, whatever you got, sort of thing. So there's like a lot of different ways you can do this if you don't have a training partner. But here he is doing his stiff leg deadlifts. And this is cool too, his stiff leg deadlifts. He's got like 160 kilos on here, but look at that range of motion. It's not super big, because it doesn't have to be to hit your whole hamstring. Like you do not have to be going way beyond the toes. This is like a different development, different movement pattern. And this is coming from a flexibility guy, right? It's like, if I want to hammer my hamstrings and I want to get the most out of just those and that quality in a stretch position, I'm going to be doing stiff leg deadlifts to a similar range of motion that Dorian's using here. Not that much weight, but blood and guts. Like if you haven't gone through that old training footage of Dorian when he was like in his prime, he put on crazy size using this approach, which required crazy amount of performance enhancing drugs. You got to take that into account, guys. If you're looking at these methods, the Mentzler high intensity approach, and you're not considering the amount of gear that these guys were on to evoke that kind of result, like you got to be a little more realistic with that approach. But some other things to think about here is like, you don't need to do much in terms of like the amount of exercises. Intensity is super, super important. Dorian himself, he is back at it. Like if you look him up, he's still smashing it. He's still in great shape. And he actually got into more of a yogi practice in recent years. So he spent like years developing a mobility practice and improving his flexibility so that he can keep smashing it. He's still doing HIIT training. He must be in his later 60s now or later 50s. But yeah, this is definitely one to explore if you haven't. And there's some big things to consider there in your own training. If you do want to give the HIIT training approach a try, 2 to 3 week block, I would use it like as a transitional period between more specific training goals. You can create some muscle damage. You can get like a bit of a different stimulus and get yourself prepped for, something that might be a little bit more specific to your needs as someone who maybe isn't juiced to the gills. But there's a lot of cool shit in that old training footage that I recommend checking out. And if you have any more questions, just post in the comments and we can go from there.